Gotcha. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to our session on the drug trends among our youth. We are very fortunate and grateful for Clark Morrow from the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department for organizing the second in a series of workshops for our parents and staff to just share with us what's happening, what we should be on the lookout for. As we have just had an opportunity to do some banter prior to the workshop, we realized, just sharing how important our kids' safety is to all of us. It is our number one top priority, whether we're looking from the perspective of being parents, being educators, or just even community members. There's really not anything more important than making sure that our kids are safe and healthy, and that their environment while they're at school and while they're at home is one that is the best possible. So Clark's going to talk to us about things probably that are going to be shocking to us. I think, the intent is that we know what's going on so that we can have those heart-to-heart conversations with our kids and try to be ahead of the game as much as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it on over to you, Clark. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, but I will be monitoring the chat and we will have time for questions, I hope, at the end. So feel free to put anything in the chat and we'll make sure that we try to get to as many of those as possible. And you do have one thing, you do have the ability to unmute yourself, but we've just muted everybody to just make sure that the presentation is uninterrupted. So take it away, Clark.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for being here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this information with you. I appreciate the opportunity. We have a lot of information to get to, so we're going to jump right into it right away. And we're going to start off with a bit of good news, balanced by a little bit of bad news at the same time. If you take a close look at this chart, what you're going to see is that the number of young people who are smoking cigarettes has come down dramatically since about 2010. It's been coming down dramatically. And that's good news. We like the fact that more and more young people are getting away from cigarettes, getting away from tobacco, and that's good. Unfortunately, as you can see from the red line there, there's been a drastic and equally dramatic or even more dramatic increase in the number of young people who are vaping and taking advantage of e-cigarettes and vape pens and that sort of thing. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction to the fact that we do see this big problem here with e-cigarettes. We're talking about vaping marijuana, and we're talking about vaping liquid nicotine and other flavored liquids, sweet flavored liquids. Those three things, and we'll talk about that more as we go along. Now, when you talk to young people about drug usage, what you usually come across are three different responses. One, they'll deny it. They'll say, no, it's not me. I know a lot of kids who are using, but it's not me, even if they are in a lot of cases. Or they'll minimize the drug usage that they're indulging in. They'll say, it's just a little pot, just a little weed, and it could be a lot worse. I could be doing heroin. I could be doing fentanyl. It's not that bad. It's just a little weed. Or they'll rationalize it. And what that means is that they'll come up with very poor excuses for doing what they're doing. They'll say things like, well, it's just marijuana. It's green, it's herbal, it's medicine, it's legal in a lot of places. It grows in the earth. What could be wrong with that? It's part of Mother Nature's wonderful provision for us. That's rationalizing because there are serious health concerns, health and psychological concerns with young people using marijuana, which we're also going to get into. First, let's take an overview. There are 7 basic categories of drugs. There are central nervous system depressants. These are drugs that slow down your metabolism and make time go by much more slowly than usual. There are CNS stimulants that speed up your system, your metabolism, and make time go by very quickly and give you a lot of unreliable, unhealthy energy. There are hallucinogens, drugs that make you see and hear things. There's PCP, which is so bad, it's in a category all by itself. And we have narcotic analgesics, which are basically prescription painkillers in most cases. These are drugs that take away pain and are usually prescribed, but there are also, of course, a lot of non-prescription analgesics as well. We'll talk about those. There are inhalants, drugs that you huff, breathe in order to get high. And then there's our old friend, cannabis marijuana. These are the different ways of getting drugs into the body. You can inject them, smoke them, snort them, drink them, inhale them, or we have this all-purpose category, you can ingest them. And by ingesting, we mean any way of getting drugs into an opening in the body. You can use your imagination. There used to be parties, college parties, back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean like 10, 15 years ago, when butt plugging, butt drinking was very big. Putting a funnel in certain parts of the body and pouring beer into it. That's what we mean by ingesting, finding unusual ways of getting drugs into your body. All right, when we're talking about marijuana usage, here are some of the health concerns that we're dealing with. Heavy use is linked to depression and suicide in adolescents. Heavy usage among young people of marijuana, and this is not my opinion, these are not my opinions. These are clinical studies, these are scientific studies that you see listed there. Use in adolescence is associated with increased risk for psychotic disorders in adulthood. In other words, heavy usage has a delayed effect later on in life. Psychotic disorders, psychotic breaks, that is, breaks with reality, being dissociated from reality in certain episodes. And the risk for psychotic disorders increases with how often you use marijuana, the potency, and kids are using a much stronger potency now than they were before, and the age you were when you first started using. The younger you are when you first start using marijuana, the more drastic the effects are, the more serious the effects are later on in life. Use among adolescents is linked to a decline in IQ and is associated with educational dropout. More usage, earlier usage, heavy usage. This has a much greater tendency to lead to drops in IQ and discontinuing one's education. Use has been linked to the development of drug dependency, including alcohol, tobacco, and other illicit drugs. We used to laugh at the idea that, or certain people used to laugh at the idea that marijuana was a gateway drug. Well, there are some people who focus primarily, almost exclusively on marijuana, but there are also studies like this one from 2017 that indicate it can certainly act as a gateway drug to other drugs. Marijuana intoxication is an important cause of MVAs. Those are multi-vehicle accidents associated with injury and death. So it's wrong to say, as some people say, that marijuana usage never killed anyone. Well, no, anytime you use an intoxicant, something that's going to make you high and then get behind the wheel of a car, well, that's going to have unpleasant effects, of course. All right, here's how young people are ingesting their marijuana nowadays. The preferred method of ingesting marijuana. It's not 420 anymore, where you leave school in the afternoon and then around 420 you get together with your friends and fire up a doobie. It's not the case anymore. What they're doing now is young people are vaping marijuana in wax form. It's called cannabis oil, wax, canna butter, honey butter, a lot of different names for it. But basically what we're talking about is the manufacturer takes leaf marijuana, lays it out in a big cookie sheet sort of thing, pushes pure butane through the marijuana, which pushes out the pure THC in liquid form. They refrigerate that. It takes on the consistency of wax, like you see here, and that's why it's called wax. And then you break off a tiny portion of that, about the size of your little fingernail, and you put that in a vape pen, e-cigarette, and you vape it. That's the preferred method of marijuana ingestion among our young people now. And there are several reasons why they prefer to do it that way rather than smoke a marijuana cigarette. One of the reasons they prefer it is that it puts out a lot of vapor, certainly, but it puts out a lot less marijuana odor. It doesn't produce the odor, the aroma, the very distinctive marijuana aroma that we're all familiar with, right? So that's one advantage. Plus, it's very strong. It's pure THC. This is not Cheech and Chong marijuana from the 70s we're talking about. This is very, very strong, powerful stuff. And that's one of the reasons we see those medical studies indicating that it has the deleterious effects that it has. Now, this is a photograph of a bust that we made, the Sheriff's Department made at a high desert illegal marijuana grow. And as usual, there are a lot of weapons associated with these illegal grows. And you can see the leaf, the buds, the marijuana buds there. But up in the left-hand corner, you can see the bottle of honey oil that I'm talking about. That's something that we always find at these busts because that's the preferred method. That's how kids want to get their marijuana fix, their marijuana high. And so we always find that along with the leaf and the buds. So youth are vaping nicotine and wax, essentially liquid nicotine and wax marijuana. Those are the two most popular substances that are being vaped. Now, a lot of kids will get started off on just sugar water that is flavored with different fruit flavors. That's how the manufacturers of the vape pens get the kids hooked on it to begin with while they're very young. And we'll see how they package it so that it appeals to kids. This is a photograph of a variety of different vape pens that are available right now. Vape pens are the e-cigarettes of the pot world. Vape pens, as distinguished from the e-cigarettes, are used primarily for marijuana concentrate, the wax, the honey butter that I was talking about. And they use this in the vape pen, and it's dangerously potent. Like I said, pure THC in a lot of cases. Fentanyl is coming along so strongly, so much more so now than ever before, that we have to talk about it because it's incredibly dangerous. This is heroin's synthetic and much stronger cousin. It's up to 100 times more potent than morphine. It's a super effective painkiller, which makes it very attractive, theoretically, on paper to a lot of people. But look how dangerous it is. In the photograph, that's a lethal dose of heroin on the left-hand side. That's a lethal, fatal dose of fentanyl on the right-hand side. You can see how little of it you need in order to die from an overdose of fentanyl. And the problem is that fentanyl is being mixed into 40% of all the illicit drugs that are out there on the market. So young people think they're buying some leaf marijuana, or they think they're buying marijuana edibles, and they don't realize that fentanyl is being cut into it, and that makes it so much more deadly than it would be if it was just marijuana, of course. So that is why we see more and more fatal overdoses among casual drug users nowadays. So they're cutting the drug fentanyl into every other drug, and young people are vaping whatever drugs they can get their hands on. So more and more young people are vaping drugs like fentanyl, carfentanil, which is even stronger than fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, anything they can find and get their hands on. They're putting it into vape pens, they're putting them into e-cigarettes and suffering the effects. You see the white grains there next to the penny, that's a fatal dose of fentanyl right there. That's all it takes to kill you. So if you can imagine a few of those grains mixed into the drug, that the illicit drug that you're buying, or the fake phony pharmaceutical that is very popular right now, it's going to have a devastating effect. And here's the devastating effect. You can see it right here. Fentanyl deaths per year. Look at the dramatic increase that occurred around about 2015. And since 2020, which was the plague year, that was the pandemic year when we all went into lockdown, since then, that number has just gone higher and higher and higher, because more and more young people are suffering the psychological effects of lockdowns, being isolated, being quarantined at home, going to school online, suffering the effects of not seeing their friends as often as they used to, not socializing with other kids their own age in person as much as they used to. So they're reaching out and trying to engage in a lot of different self-comforting activities, more so now than before. And one of the ways they're reaching out to do this is to buy drugs, all kinds of different drugs on social media. More and more young people are actually buying their drugs on social media sites, the kind of sites that we're all familiar with. Snapchat, TikTok, you name it. Instagram, all the popular ones. That's where they're going to buy their drugs more and more nowadays. So fentanyl is being cut into a wide variety of drugs. An estimated 100,000 Americans, or roughly 272 a day, died from drug overdoses from March 2020, when we went into lockdown, to April of last year. So just in San Bernardino County, just this year, there have been 14 overdose deaths among teenagers due to fentanyl, just in our own county. That's becoming the real epidemic now. Now, you've heard about Juuling. Juuling is when kids go online and they spend about $50 to buy one of these kits. And the kit comes to them in a plain paper bag, paper package rather. And it's this vape pen that's about the size of a large thumb drive. And you get a couple of pods. You will get like 4 of these pods that are filled with liquid nicotine. Now, each one of these pods contains 50 milligrams of nicotine. In other words, each pod contains more nicotine than a whole pack of cigarettes. And these kids will go through one pod after another all day long. And those kids that can afford it, I'm talking about. So these are very, very popular. Let's not underestimate how popular these Juuls are. They command a big share of the entire e-cigarette market. And they're popular for a variety of reasons. One reason is the vape pen itself is so small that you can hide it in your hand. And students at school will pretend to be coughing into their fist, when actually what they're doing is inhaling from the Juul, from the vape pen, this liquid nicotine. And then they'll expel it into their t-shirt, into their shirt, into their armpit. And it's very difficult sometimes to determine whether or not they're Juuling, whether or not they're vaping. Because, like I say, it doesn't put out the aroma that traditional cigarettes do. So what we're doing is we're creating the next generation of nicotine addicts. Over the past year, the number of high school students that have used e-cigarettes in the past 30 days has skyrocketed by about 75%. That means about 20% of all high schoolers, 3 million kids, are using e-cigarettes, up from just 11.7% last year, according to the CDC. These numbers, since the pandemic, since what I call the perfect storm of all these adverse effects that occurred in 2020 and 2021, all the numbers are moving in the wrong direction. Here's what I was talking about earlier. Juuls smoke the competition. Yeah, you can tell from the pie chart here that Juuls make up almost 73% of all the e-cigarettes that are sold in the United States. That's how popular Juuls are. And they are a continuing problem because it's very, as I say, it's difficult to detect whether they're being used, especially if they're being used in the boys' bathroom, for example. Some schools are going to the extent of installing vapor detectors in the bathrooms to try to catch the kids in the act of Juuling, but it's very difficult to do. And one of the other problems is that they can just blow up in your face. This is a vape pen that did just that, blew up in somebody's face. And you can imagine the kind of damage this is going to do to your face if it happens while you're smoking it or vaping it. And these items are manufactured overseas in China in a lot of cases, and they're shipped into the United States. There's not a lot of quality control when it comes to the manufacture of these things. And they're not always well regulated by the FDA and other organizations. Incidentally, youth who vape are 3.5 times more likely to use marijuana. So vaping itself, even if it's just liquid nicotine or fruit flavored juices, can act as a kind of gateway drug to marijuana, which in turn acts as a kind of gateway drug to harder drugs as well. Now, when it comes to vaping pure nicotine, there are 2 basic types. There's freebase and there's salt nic, or nicotine salt. It's usually called salt nic. Freebase is just pure nicotine, pure liquid nicotine. That's all it is. So it burns very hot. And for some kids, especially some young adults who are trying to get off cigarettes, that's what they want. They want that throat burn. They want what's called the throat to chest hit. And that's what they're looking for. So they go for the free base. Salt nic is nicotine plus all the other organic compounds that are found in tobacco, all ground up, all mulched together, and you vape that. So it's higher nicotine strength because you're getting also the seeds and the stems and everything else. So there's more nicotine, but it doesn't have the rough throat hit that freebase has. It's smoother when you vape it. So salt nic is very popular among those young people who don't want the throat burn. These are very popular. These are disposable puffs, and they are disposable. They're full of liquid nicotine, salt nic. So they're smoother. They're smoother on the throat, easier on the throat. 5% nic salt. You get about 800 puffs in each one. There's a little battery in it that activates when you draw on it, when you suck it in. Draw activated firing mechanism. There's 2.7 milliliters of liquid nicotine in each one, and they're disposable. You use them up, get your 800 puffs, and then throw them away. These are extraordinarily popular because they're not all that expensive compared to some other vape pens. I was visiting an assistant principal for discipline up at one of the mountain high schools recently. And she opened her drawer, and her entire drawer was full of these disposable puffs. That's how many she had taken off students there at her school. That's how popular they are. Puff bars. This is another version, 5% salt nic for a smooth draw. That's how they advertise these things. And they come in a variety of different flavors. This one is blueberry ice. But there are a lot of other flavors as well, strawberry, cherry, lemon, the usual things. And it tells you right up front here, this product contains tobacco and nicotine. Tobacco-free nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Yeah, it certainly is. You know how difficult it is for a lot of people to kick the cigarette habit. Well, imagine how difficult it is going to be for young people to kick the liquid nicotine habit when they're Juuling and you're getting more nicotine in each pod than there is in an entire pack of cigarettes. And you can modify your vape pen to make it more adapted to your particular tastes. This is the advertising language. Mods allow you to adjust the temperature, voltage, and wattage of your modified vape pen so you can further customize each vape you take. And here's an example of some vape mods. Vapors who have been using an e-cigarette often transition to a vape mod that will give them the same type of mouth-to-lung hit they got from a cigarette. See, the manufacturers know that a lot of these young people are trying to get off cigarettes, so they advertise them in this way to make them more attractive to those young people. Vape mods provide you with the throat and chest hit that you crave. So they make you think you're getting less nicotine, not always the case, but you're still going to experience that throat burn that you used to get from a cigarette, and you're going to like it. So you're going to be able to get away from those nasty old cigarettes, use a vape pen, modify it so you can adjust the throat burn that you get and adjust the mouth to lung hit that you get as well. The manufacturers will do whatever they can to appeal to these young people who are either getting off cigarettes or just interested in vaping because they hear so many of their schoolmates talking about vaping. And they'll put liquid marijuana in what look like juice boxes. Why? Because so many of our kids grew up using juice boxes. So this is going to appeal to their happy childhood memories of juice boxes and happy times when they were a kid. And what they're doing is getting liquid marijuana in this fashion. Look at the labels: marijuana mate, Hawaiian hash, hashy hash. There's all kinds of different flavors, but it's all liquid marijuana. It's all canna butter. It's all honey oil. But it looks innocent because it's in these colorful cartoon boxes that appeal to young people. So the manufacturers, like I say, will do anything they can to make this appeal to kids, even if it means trading on childhood memories. These are hookahs and shisha pens. That's a hookah on the left. You put the marijuana or you put the leaf marijuana or whatever you're smoking in the top bowl, and you suck on the hose there, and it pulls the smoke down through the water in the bottom, and the water cools off the burning smoke. These are very popular. 20% of our young people use hookahs. They're buying these online and using them. The pens, the things that look like pens, are called shisha pens. And basically, it's the same thing. They have water in them that you draw the vapor through, and it supposedly cools off the vapor and makes it very mellow, very smooth. Electronic water pipes vaporize a flavored liquid. These are designed to appeal to children. Notice the different colors, the bright different colors that are designed to appeal to kids, and they are appealing to kids. That's why 20% of our kids are using hookahs. Here's some more deceptive packaging and advertising that gets designed to get children using marijuana, THC. Kush cookies, gummy rings, lollipops, hot Cheetos, caramel popcorn, cereal, whatever they have to do to make the products, to make the marijuana look like it's appealing, looks like it's innocent, and in an innocent food form, that's what they'll do, even making it look like Captain Crunch cereal. But these are very powerful, high concentrations of THC edibles. Edibles come in every conceivable different form. Whatever kids like to eat, they'll put the edibles, the marijuana edibles, in that form, whether it's popcorn, lollipops, gummy rings, whatever it is. And kids just to follow right along and say, wow, this sure looks like fun. But edibles are dangerous. Edibles take effect 20 minutes to 2 hours after you eat them. So kids eat some, feeling nothing after a few minutes, so they think they didn't eat enough. So they eat more. They eat far too much. And by the time they start feeling the effects, it's too late. They've taken in too much. And then they suffer the medical effects of ingesting too much THC, which can be very dangerous. So this is the problem. They take some, doesn't seem to be doing anything for me. Maybe I didn't take enough. I'll take a little bit more. And then they take too much. And by that time, it's too late, and they wind up in the emergency room or urgent care. Here's some more packaging for you. Fruity Pebbles, Blueberry Tricks. These are capsules, of liquid nicotine that go into a vape pen, e-cigarette, and they design them to look as innocent and as harmless as they possibly can. And kids get fooled by this. And they make them look like crayons. These are kiddie vape pens. Vape pens for vaping liquid juice that is fruit flavored, but a lot of kids will put those liquid nicotine capsules in them, and they're designed to look like crayons from childhood. Once again, trading on our childhood memories of times when it was innocent, times when things were safe, and look, it must be safe because it looks just like a crayon. How dangerous can it be, really, when you think about it? Well, if you think about it, you realize how dangerous it is. Here are the lollipop versions. Now, these are pot pops, and each one contains, on average, they're not really regulated very well, so we have to talk about averages. On average, these have about 90 milligrams of THC in them. The average joint that you smoke has just 7 milligrams of THC. You see how strong, how dangerously strong these things are. They don't look dangerous, do they? No, they look like green apple and grape lollipops. But they're dangerous for people with heart problems or other underlying comorbidities, as we've learned to say in the last couple of years. And kids just don't realize how dangerous they are. Cannabis patches, you put these on your skin, under your clothing. Nobody knows you're wearing them. So these are popular with young people at school. The effects last up to 12 hours. The THC is absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Each patch has a dosage of 10 to 12 milligrams. That's strong. The average joint has just 7. Unregulated, so we don't really know how much you're getting. and will cause you to fail a drug test, obviously, because this is a drug going into your body. But they're popular because you can order these online. They're relatively inexpensive. You can get these, you can actually get these at some CBD stores. They sell them under the counter and they don't make a lot of noise about it, but yeah, they're selling them because they're popular. Popular nicotine gum. You can chew your nicotine all day long buying Lucy's. And they come in different flavors: wintergreen, pomegranate, cinnamon, take your pick. But once again, a lot of 4 milligrams of nicotine in each piece, and kids will chew these all day long, day after day after day. Imagine how much nicotine is getting into the systems of our young people because they're chewing these things all the time. And they're popular. It's not just a couple of kids out there doing this. They talk among themselves. They're constantly selling these things to each other. I mean, verbally, advocating them to each other. And that's how it spreads. And if chewing is not your thing, you can get your nicotine toothpicks. These are Pixatines, the original nicotine toothpick, cinnamon flavor. And they warn you again, nicotine is an addictive chemical. But kids will put these in their mouth and chew on them all day long. I don't know if you've seen kids at school with these things in their mouths, but I know they're popular. I know kids get addicted to these because it is nicotine, it is addictive, and they just innocently pop one in their mouth one after another. And this goes on. And I know sales for these have been skyrocketing. So be aware of this. The kid may not just have a regular normal toothpick in his mouth. It may be a nicotine toothpick. And the trouble is they look like a regular toothpick. And how are you going to tell the difference? Makes it very difficult to tell. It's so easy to get your weed delivered. You can get your weed delivered on a weed delivery app like Vapor Room. This is just one of many. You go on here, you give them your credit card number, or you steal your parents' credit card number or debit card. You put that number in here. And it gives you a menu. You select the flavor you want: blueberry kush, Girl Scout cookies, Jack Herer, whatever it may be. You have it delivered to your house. Or if you don't want to do that because mom and dad might get suspicious of all these strange packages coming into their house, you have it delivered to your friend's house who maybe doesn't have a lot of parental oversight, not a lot of structure in his life. He's pretty much running wild on his own. So you have it delivered to his house and he brings it over to you and you share the product. We see that happen a great deal. So it's nowadays you can get anything delivered to your house like a pizza. And I mean anything. Weapons, guns, stolen property, hot property, prostitutes, drugs, you name it, it can be delivered to your house. More and more kids are, like I said earlier, more and more kids are buying drugs on social media. The drug dealers post photos with captions that include hashtags, emojis, instructions on how to contact the dealer through encrypted messaging apps like WhatsApp or Kik Messenger. They don't want them contacting them directly. No direct messaging, no. We'll do it through encrypted messaging apps so that we don't create a digital footprint that leads back to me, the seller rather. So the transaction takes place there. Buyers pay using services like Venmo, PayPal, and have the product shipped to their friend's house once again. Or they will try to meet the dealer in person and pay with cash, which is one of the most dangerous things a young person can do, which is why so many young people are simply disappearing nowadays. Big uptick in the number of young people simply vanishing in the last couple of years. These are the most popular drugs being sold on social media right now. These are the hashtags, things you would imagine kids would be buying, like pain pills, Oxycontin, Percocet, Xanax. But you see, the problem is they're also buying fentanyl, cocaine, and heroin. And why kids are buying fentanyl online when just a few grains of it can kill you is hard for me to imagine. But kids will do anything to get high. That's my motto. Here are some hashtags and terms to watch for. Hashtag crow usually refers to marijuana. Hashtag Molly they're talking about MDMA, which is ecstasy. Kids think Molly is a pure form of ecstasy. It's not. It's cut with whatever the manufacturer can sweep up off the floor of his kitchen to stretch it out with. P911 means parent alert. Don't say anything because the parent is watching over my shoulder. KPC, keeping parents clueless. Kiki means to party. Turnt refers to a party. And vibing, of course, once again, refers to party. Kids are talking about partying online. So if you see these terms, you might want to ask your young person about them. Four-leaf clover is usually used to talk about marijuana. And that's rather obvious. It's easy to spot that one. They're not talking about St. Patrick's Day. They're talking about marijuana there. A lot of bad drug challenges on TikTok right now. This is the Benadryl challenge. It's a challenge that kids are challenging each other to chug as much Benadryl as they can in order to hallucinate. You can imagine how dangerous that is. And in fact, one 15-year-old girl died as a result of the Benadryl challenge just a couple of years ago. And it's still going on. These challenges go on and on, or they go away for a short period of time and then they come recycling right back again. And we used to have Skittle parties back in the day. Kids are bringing that back now, apparently, where they steal drugs from their parents' medicine chest, take it to a party, throw it in a bowl, mix them all up, and then one by one, they take a handful of those drugs. And in a lot of cases, chase it with alcohol, which because the drugs themselves aren't dangerous enough, so you have to drink alcohol on top of them. They wind up in the emergency room. Doctors have to run all kinds of panels on them to find out exactly what's in their system because they don't know what kind of drugs they were taking. That's a bad trend that's coming back again. So we need to be aware of that. But be aware of the fact that on TikTok, there are a lot of bad challenges like the Blackout challenge. It's where kids challenge each other to tie something around their neck, suspend themselves from overhead, cut off just enough blood to the brain to go high, get a high feeling going. But the trouble is they cut off too much blood to the brain, they pass out, and then they slump down, fall down, and hang themselves, strangle themselves to death. It's also called the Blackout challenge, also called the Blackout game, flatlining, a lot of different names for this. As you can see, it's dangerous. It's obviously deadly. And kids like this one in Denver are either losing consciousness, winding up paralyzed, having strokes, having all kinds of neurological problems as a result of this, and dying. K2, spice. What this is basically any kind of smokable foliage, anything you can chop up and smoke, and it's sprayed with synthetic compounds and then sold in these little packets as potpourri or incense or something like that. And this is very popular in the high desert area, you should be aware of, because a lot of this grows wild up there. And it's the giveaway is that it's very expensive. It's like $35 or more for one of these little packets. And who's going to spend $40 on a little packet of incense or potpourri, for example? That's the giveaway. And it's very strong, 10 times more intense than marijuana. Comes in these 3 gram packages, a lot of different flavors, bright colors again, designed to appeal to kids. Blonde, pink, citron, summit are some of the most popular names for K2. So if you hear kids talking about spice, K2, this is what they're talking about. Also, Salvia divinorum, Sally D. It grows wild up in the high desert areas. You see this at on-ramps, off-ramps of the freeway, growing wild there. It's relatively cheaper. It's somewhat cheaper than the K2 and spice because it is so plentiful. And you don't have to spray it with a recipe, a special formula of drugs, of chemicals. So it's potent, it's prevalent, it's widespread, and it's cheap. And they sell this the same way they sell the K2 and spice. But be aware of the fact that there are websites like salviadragon.com where this is being sold online to young people, to teenagers and preteens. They say it's not an hallucinogen, non-habit forming, but that's a lie because they also advertise it as giving you an out-of-body experience. So big surprise, drug dealers lie. Well, let's not forget meth is still around big time. And yes, it does do that sort of thing to your face and to your whole body. Because if you put a drug into your body, it's going to work its way out of your body one way or another. And with meth, it's going to work its way out through the pores in your skin, and it's going to cause an itch. And these people on speed are speeding so fast that they start scratching and they can't stop. And they scratch and scratch and scratch and until they tear their faces up, and eventually they look like this. And so it's not just a punchline, not just a joke that tweakers look like this. They really do. Tesla pills. Now, these are very popular among young people, so we need to be on the lookout for these. These pills have the Tesla logo on them. And what they are is a blend of ecstasy and opioids, oxy drugs, which makes them very, very dangerous. And these pills have high concentrations of this mashup. They contain between 130 and 200 milligrams of ecstasy, just the ecstasy alone. And a large dose is anything over 110 milligrams. So you can see how strong and dangerous these Tesla pills are. But they're popular because they're considered cool because they have the Tesla logo on. The user is starting with a dose that is considered very strong. And obviously that's going to do damage to your body, that much ecstasy, and who knows how much oxy is in these drugs, these pills as well. So keep your eyes open for these Tesla pills. Kratom is getting big in the Inland Empire. This is a drug that comes in from Southeast Asia. It's an opioid, like morphine, like heroin. It's a pain-killing stimulant. Highly addictive. It's just as addictive as heroin. It's just as hard to kick the habit as heroin is. And plus, if that's not bad enough, it comes with dangerous levels of contaminants, lead, nickel, salmonella. People are dying just from the additives put in this kratom drug. Now, the drug itself, even though it's very addictive, is used as an herbal supplement and a traditional medicine in Southeast Asia. But you get addicted to it like you get addicted to heroin. It's just as hard to get off it. And people are dying from the bad ingredients that are being cut into the kratom. Once again, whatever the drug dealer can sweep up in his laboratory, that's what he's going to put into his drug to stretch it out so he has more product. Now, I was driving back from lunch one time back to the office and here in San Bernardino, and I saw this sign at one of the intersections. And I took a photograph of it to show you how popular, how widespread kratom is starting to get. Remember, this is highly addictive. It's like heroin and deadly because of the additives that we find inside it. Now, there's a very popular form of ingesting heroin going on among students right now. Heroin, by the way, is so plentiful, so widespread, that it's very cheap. You can get a hit of heroin on any school campus for like $10 now. There is so much heroin flooding in from China, up through Mexico, up across the border into the United States that is just crazy popular, crazy available. So what they do is they will take liquid heroin. What we're talking about is liquid heroin. You put it in Visine bottles and you snort it. Or you take tar heroin, you put it into a container with a penny, and you shake the container very hard, which powderizes the tar heroin. Then you add alcohol to it, or whatever you want to add to it, makes it a liquid form, and then you put it in the Visine bottle and you snort it. A lot of kids will prefer doing it this way rather than injecting themselves or shooting up with a needle. So it's called Liquid O, monkey juice, throttle bottle, a lot of different names for it. And if you hear kids talking about that sort of thing, this is what they're talking about. Scissor is still very popular among young people because it's cheap, easy to make. All you need is a plastic cup. You fill it half full of cough syrup, the rest of it with 7-Up or Sprite. You throw in the Jolly Roger candy, and you drink it as fast as you possibly can. It's been around since the 80s, as far as I know. Came out of the hip hop culture in Houston, Texas. Lil Wayne has a song about how great Purple Drank is. It's called Lean, it's called Purple Drank, called Scissor. It's still around because it's easy, cheap to make. And you can imagine what happens to you when you drink that much promethazine and codeine all at once when you chug it. It produces a very strong high, but it's not very healthy for you, as you can imagine. Vodka soaked tampons are still around. Kids have been using these for like the last 10 years. You take a tampon, soak it in vodka, insert it, boys insert them rectally, and you get very high, obviously, because the alcohol goes directly into the bloodstream. This is one of the selling points. This is what makes it attractive to young people. Is one of the things is you don't need a lot of alcohol to get drunk. A little bit will do because the alcohol is going right into the bloodstream. Plus, you don't have alcohol in your breath. You can't smell it on your breath. So kids are acting drunk at school. You can't smell any alcohol and you wonder what's wrong with it. But obviously, there are a lot of problems involved with this: internal burning, damage to membranes, damage to the reproductive system, and it's way too easy to take in too much alcohol this way and die from alcohol poisoning, which we've seen happen. Crazy, crazy stuff. Cocaine's coming back big time among young adults. More and more of it is being produced in Colombia. There was a big crackdown on cocaine back in the 80s. Remember Miami Vice and all that? Went out of production for a while, but it's back now. Bigger profit margin than heroin because it's not as plentiful as heroin now. And it's a purer product than we used to see, just as deadly, even more deadly because it's purer. And it's leading to heart attacks, circulatory problems, strokes. There are cocaine exclusive call centers being advertised on social media that handle nothing but cocaine, pure quality cocaine. So you call these cocaine exclusive call centers and they have cocaine cabs that will deliver the cocaine to wherever you want them delivered. Like I say, you can have anything at all delivered to your house or wherever you want it delivered, just like a pizza. Snorting chocolate, yeah, kids will do anything to get high, including snorting chocolate powder. It's like it has the same ingredients as energy drinks, and it can be just as deadly because this is concentrated and they're taking it in a very unhealthy manner because it raises blood pressure, causes heart palpitations. Obviously, if you're snorting powder, it can block your sinuses, acts as a gateway drug to other harder drugs. The effects last 30 to 60 minutes. It's almost like an energy drink feeling, but even energy drinks can be dangerous, of course, when you overindulge in them. But this is particularly nasty. The upside is that it's easier to spot somebody snorting chocolate powder because they usually have it around their nose. Carfentanil is bad. I mentioned this earlier. It's an elephant tranquilizer coming in from China. Very, very powerful. Zookeepers have to use a hazmat suit when they're using it because even one drop in the eye or mouth can kill you. Not even Narcan will prove effective as an antidote. We're seeing more of this coming in from China. And this too is getting cut into other drugs because there's so much heroin, for example, that I have to make my heroin stand out from my competitor's heroin by giving it an extra punch, extra kick by putting fentanyl and carfentanil in it. Molly's still around. Kids think it's a pure form of ecstasy, like I mentioned. We see a lot of this at raves and all-night dance parties. Dosing. This is strange. This is where kids will put on headphones, drape a hood over their head or blindfold themselves, and then go to YouTube and listen to certain repetitive music clips that are said to mimic the effects of certain drugs. So if you want a marijuana high, you go to YouTube and listen to certain music clips that are said to produce in you a high similar to a marijuana high. You want a cocaine high, they have music clips for that. You want a heroin high, you listen to those music clips. And they repeat over and over and over again. These are called digital drugs. They change the brain waves, so they produce these highs. And you can see how popular they are. Some songs are receiving nearly 500,000 hits on YouTube. That's how big this is getting to be. And it acts as a gateway because kids say, well, this is not a real drug, but I like the effect. So hard drugs, real drugs, physical drugs must give you an even better effect. So they go on to that. Now, this video that I'm going to show you shows you several kids reacting to dosing. And this is an advertisement for an dosing website.
Welcome to the world's top binaural brainwave, lucid dream, spiritual, and metaphysical channel. Please like and subscribe today.
Will you handle the iDoser challenge, the most intense YouTube challenge ever created?
Can you handle iDoser? Handle iDoser?
Will you handle iDoser?
Can you handle iDoser?
Starting to feel like a lightheaded kind of warrior.
The brain processes it as if they're hearing a beat. Using our specialized audio consisting of multiple pulsating tones, we attempt to synchronize your brainwaves to a desired state. Some have found it a powerful way to manipulate mood and emotions. As for how it feels, you tell us after you visit iDoser.com. iDoser specializes in the world's best-selling and most effective artisan brainwave doses. Join the 10 million iDoser users worldwide and explore the most extensive and powerful collection available anywhere.
Okay, you get the idea. You get the idea. And you notice how they have different levels of intensity, which is problematical because experts say that this has the effect, this has the possibility, the potential to create seizures in young people because you're adjusting and changing brainwaves through these repetitive music clips. And you go into sensory deprivation when you're doing this. And it's largely unexplored territory for a lot of young people who may be susceptible to seizures in the first place, have neurological issues. So it's also posed as a challenge. And the manufacturers, the iDosers, the people behind iDosing, they know that kids will accept anything if you pose it as a challenge. Things they wouldn't do otherwise, they will do if you make a challenge out of it. Like the cartoon says, if you ask somebody to jump off a cliff, they'll say no. If you make it hashtag jump off a cliff challenge, they're more likely to do it. So they know what they're doing when they're selling this stuff to young people. They pose it as a challenge. And how can you handle it? Can you handle it? It's a brain party. Can you handle it?
Welcome to the world.
You get the idea. Now, these are called ice cream trucks, but they're not really ice cream trucks. For one thing, you would never want to eat anything out of these trucks because they're so dirty and dilapidated and nasty looking. What they're selling are shot pens, drugs, and weapons. And these cruise around different schools. You'll see them in some neighborhoods. You'll see them around a lot of different schools. They just busted a bunch of these in the Los Angeles school district for hanging around a lot of different schools there. And they're working their way out to the Inland Empire as well. So be aware of this. They try to pass themselves off as ice cream trucks, but they're selling drugs, weapons, anything they can find that is going to appeal to young people as a contraband item. They know kids love to get their hands on contraband items. And so whatever they can find that they think the kids will go for, they'll sell it out of these trucks. So be aware of that. Hand sanitizer cocktails. Kids separate the alcohol in hand sanitizers from the detergent, the soap part, by using salt. The salt will separate the two items. And the resulting dosage is equal to a shot of pure alcohol. So once you separate the alcohol, it's pure alcohol. It's like moonshine. It's very strong, 100% alcohol. And they will shoot that, and that's not good. Best advice for parents, buy the foam version of hand sanitizer, because then it's much more difficult to separate the alcohol from the soap using salt. As I say, kids will do anything to get high, including Huffing Bug Spray, believe it or not. This is called KD, and that's the street name. What they'll do is take, once again, anything that they can chop up and smoke, tobacco, banana skins, marijuana, spices from the kitchen spice cabinet, anything that you can put into a bowl and smoke or into a vape pen and smoke. And they'll spray it with bug spray, which makes it much more effective as a drug. as a hallucinogenic drug. Bags of KD are sold for about $20 and create a catatonic high for about 45 minutes. You can imagine how dangerous this is. Huffing bug spray can cause respiratory distress, overactivity in the central nervous system, sweating, muscle spasms, seizures, and the risk of falling into a coma. I don't have to tell you that it's dangerous to inhale bug spray. It kills bugs, right? It's poisonous to human beings. But if human beings, for that matter, are going to do anything to get high, they'll experiment with this, and they'll challenge each other to do it. Nutmeg. Yeah, everybody has nutmeg in their spice cabinet at home in the kitchen, right? So this is easy to get your hands on. This is why it's popular. It's cheap. You don't have to spend money on it. And if you eat 4 to 8 teaspoons of ground nutmeg, it causes mild hallucinations, dizziness, nausea, paranoia, difficulty urinating. This is one of the worst possible highs you can feel. So a lot of highs are pleasant. They're called euphoric because they're pleasant, right? And that's why people do them. This is a very unpleasant high, but kids will do anything to get high, so they do it. It's been described as a hellish case of the flu. It feels like a 2-day hangover. The fevers and dizziness can last up to 12 hours. You're throwing up. You're having migraines, cotton mouth. But it's free, right? And you hear about other kids doing it. You see kids talking about it on social media, challenging each other to do it. You'll give it a try. Because when kids talk about this among themselves, they're not going to emphasize the bad side effects. They're going to emphasize how cool it is that I did this. I was doing I did nut, or I did K2, or I did Coca Loco. Pong seeds. Have you heard about pong seeds? We really need to know about this and talk to our young people about this, because kids talk among themselves and they spread misinformation among themselves. And kids will tell other kids that pong seeds are a painless way to commit suicide. That appeals to a lot of young people, but it's not a painless way to commit suicide. This is a very painful way to commit suicide. Now, pong seeds are big pods that are grown in Southern Asia, popular in India for murder and suicide because it's difficult to trace this drug in the body.
¿Qué dice ahí? Dime.
So it's made from a tree called the suicide tree. And kids go online and they will buy this on eBay and Amazon.com for as little as $5. And why is it sold on Amazon and eBay for as little as $5? Because people who make pottery and ceramics buy pong seeds for decorative purposes. They use these big pods with intricate designs on them to roll in ceramics and pottery to create different designs. But somehow the rumor got out among young people that this is a painless way to kill yourself. But it's not. I read an account of a teenage boy who tried to kill himself by taking pong seeds. And he was in agony. He was being tortured by these things for hours and hours, most of the day. And his folks had no idea what was going on with him. They take him to the hospital. The doctors have no idea what's going on with this kid because they've never heard of pong seeds. It's difficult to trace in the body. So they're having a difficult time finding out what's going on with him. And eventually he died after undergoing torturous pain for most of the day. So we need to get the word out among young people. Don't listen to the misinformation. This is a painful way to commit suicide, to kill yourself, in spite of what everybody else is saying on social media. Plant seed highs. Kids will take seeds of flowering plants that are widely available, easily available in nurseries, at Home Depot, at Lowe's, places like that. You can buy these seeds, you can buy these plants, sleepy grass, Hawaiian baby wood rose, blue morning glory. And the seeds have an hallucinogenic effect because they contain LSA, which is very similar to LSD. They cause hallucinations, temporal spatial distortion, side effects like nausea and vomiting. And they are popular. Believe me, these are popular because we had such a big problem with kids ingesting wood rose at a school in Grand Terrace that we had to go there. That is to say, I had to go there and work with the SROs, the school resource officers, to address the issue and talk to the young people about how dangerous this was. Because they're just popping handfuls of these seeds. They contain LSD-like substances, and you can imagine how dangerous that is. And extreme hallucinations are dangerous because if you're unsupervised, you're going to walk in front of traffic, you're going to fall off a building, you're going to jump off a building, and very, very dangerous. Plant seed hives. So when you hear kids talking about grass, sleepy grass, wood rose, morning glory, this is what they're talking about. All right, what can you do about it with all this drug activity taking place on social media? One of the things I recommend is that you put an app on your phone and on your child's phone called My Mobile Watchdog. There are others as well. There's a plethora of these out there. M-Spy, Phone Sheriff, Rethink, a lot of them out there. This is a good one. And what it does is it monitors everything your child is doing with his cell phone. And you get to see what they're doing with their cell phone. And you can block certain sites. You can set up schedules and times of day and days of the week when they're not allowed to use their phone or not allowed to use certain features on the phone, go to certain websites, things of that sort. Sort of gives you control of what your young person is doing with their phone. It's not 100% effective. None of these are a cure-all or a panacea. Doesn't work that way. There are YouTube videos showing kids how to get around these parental devices and controls, as you can imagine. But as a parent, you have a responsibility to do what you can to control what your child is doing with their phone. It's like you buy the phone, you give it to your young person, you pay the monthly bill on it, you're responsible for what the kid is doing with the phone, just as you're responsible for what the child does with the car when you lend them the car and they go off driving and getting into trouble with it. So do what you can. This is one thing you can do, My Mobile Watchdog. There's also an app called Bark. You put this on your phone, your child's phone, and then if your kid starts writing words on his phone associated with drugs or suicide or cyberbullying or sexting or whatever else, Bark will send your phone an alert saying, hey, your kid is writing words on his phone he shouldn't be writing, and you need to do something about it. And we'll give you recommendations on what you can do about it. A very useful tool that you can use in conjunction with My Mobile Watchdog. This runs $9 a month. It's a great investment, and it gives you, once again, greater control because the My Mobile Phone app is not 100% effective with iPhones. There's some real limitations on what it can do with iPhones. So you have to put a couple of these together to get good coverage. Guardian Parent Control app is another good app. It gives you all these different features for $2 a month. It's a real bargain. I'm not making any money selling these things. I'm just recommending them because they are effective to a certain extent. And that's the best we can hope for. It gives you comprehensive reports, time limits, app control, text monitoring, location and tracking alerts, all that sort of thing. Now, if you want to learn a lot more about all this vaping stuff and e-cigarettes and Juuling and everything else that we've been talking about, go to Vape Educate, vapeeducate.com. It's an online course designed to be completed by students, but anyone can benefit from learning more about all these different things. It can also be used as an educational program for teachers, parents, community members, anybody at all. I highly recommend it. And I highly recommend that all of you go to a website called safesmartsocial.com. I think they changed the name now. It's smartsocial.com. Go to smartsocial.com. Why? Because it will tell you absolutely everything you need to know about how young people are using social media, how they're using it to buy drugs, what are the good apps, what are the bad apps, what are the in-between apps. It will give you invaluable information on how you can improve your child's social media profile So now they look much more attractive to college recruiters, military recruiters, law enforcement recruiters, all the good stuff. So it's a one-stop shop for all the information you need about young people and social media. It'll answer all your questions. It'll answer questions I can't answer. And that's why I always recommend that people go to smartsocial.com. Okay, we've got time for questions. If anybody has a question, I can't see the, hold on, I'm going to make sure that I can, no, I can't see the chat.
Clark, I can read them to you.
Okay.
Okay. So one question was back to fentanyl. What are signs or symptoms of fentanyl use, and what amount is considered to have deadly consequences or side effects?
Yeah, the symptoms of fentanyl overdose are, it appears like heavy sleepiness, slowed breathing, heavy breathing. They're really out of it, slow pulse, heavy eyelids, that sort of thing. And they're unresponsive. You can't get them to respond. You can't get them to wake up. That's usually a sign of fentanyl overdose. And that means you need to call 911 right away.
No delay. Then there are a couple of comments about linking Kratom to heroin, that it is different than heroin and not an opioid, and just some additional links that some of the participants put in.
Like the slide said, it's a stimulant, and according to expert sources that I've contacted, it is as difficult to get off of as heroin. It's just as painful and difficult to get off Kratom as it is heroin. And that's the information I have.
Could I offer a comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah, my name is Matt Caddo. I'm the senior fellow on public policy, the American Kratom Association. And I welcome a dialogue on these issues, because this is important that our children are protected. And we represent consumers and we believe in it. The children have to be protected. But I think what you've just stated is not consistent with the science. And the best evidence of that is that the Federal Controlled Substances Act says that if a substance does what you just said, it would be controlled today, it would be scheduled. It is not. And there have been 3 separate attempts by the FDA to schedule it. And today the FDA has, through HHS Secretary Becerra, has said that there are knowledge gaps about Kratom that need to be filled, and that the FDA is no longer going to pursue this. So I think it would be great to have a dialogue about Kratom and how it impacts children. There is no question that adulterated Kratom can, because it's adulterated with fentanyl, heroin, and morphine, and buprenorphine and other substances. So I'd love this opportunity to talk in more detail about it. But one thing is not true. It is not as addictive as the experts that you've talked about, because they're wrong. Because the National Institute on Drug Abuse has done studies on it, and they say that it is, in fact, it is not addictive or dangerously addictive, and it doesn't have the same withdrawal symptoms as opioids. And so I think it would benefit from good education here, rather than repeating things that simply aren't supported by the science. And I say that respectfully.
Apparently, we're dealing with different scientific sources, and I don't have those sources right at hand at this time, but I appreciate your input. I appreciate the information, and it will certainly spur me to reinvestigate my scientific sources and make sure that the information we're putting out is correct.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to send you
Please do. I'll give you my contact information at the end here.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Sure, you bet. And remember, Kratom is relatively recently introduced into the United States. So, of course, yes, as you say, there are information gaps about the substance itself. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's not as regulated as it should be.
And we advocate for good regulation at the state level and the federal level too. We think it needs to be regulated so that people are protected.
I agree. I agree with you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Comments?
Any other questions? You can either type them or you can unmute as well. Everybody has the ability to unmute, so feel free to do that. I know some folks, while I'm waiting to see if there's anybody else unmutes or wants to type in the chat. I know some folks have texted me throughout the presentation and asked if we can share some of these resources. We are recording this, and then some of the resources that you shared there at the end, Clark, our staff will look at and see if there's maybe a place on our website that we can share some of those resources, or which ones might be a good fit.
Sure, you bet. You have access to the PowerPoint, so you're certainly welcome to make it available to anyone you want to make it available to. This public information.
Thank you. Anything else? I know for me, there were a lot. I think probably my biggest takeaway is I'm really grateful that we have had over 30 family members, staff, community members join us for this presentation and take time, out of very busy schedules. And I think one of my biggest takeaways is that it takes all of us, right? There are dangers out there for our kids that are that look innocuous or seem like they are not life-threatening or dangerous. And so it really takes all of us to come together, to educate ourselves, to have healthy conversations, even, debate or other things. It's really good for us as adults to have that, so that when we are talking with our kids or looking at things, that we are more knowledgeable, because I know there are plenty of things in this presentation I had never heard of. And I've been to many of these presentations. So any other comments, thoughts, questions? No. All right. Well, Clark's information is there if you wanted to have an individual follow-up, or also feel free to contact myself or any of our school site admin. We just really appreciate our families at AAE and NSLA, and are grateful and want you to know how seriously we take the safety of your children when you place them in our care. And that's really important to us. So if there aren't any other questions, I wish everybody a good night. Hopefully we have, some good family time tonight, and
Yes, discuss these issues among
Yes.
yourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Lots to talk about.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here and for the opportunity to share this information with everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
Thank you very much, Clark. We really appreciate your time and partnership. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.